Hello, my name is Kunzang Choden. Welcome to the Bhutan Storytelling Series. Today, I'm going to read a story from the book that I wrote called The Tales in Color, and the story I'm going to read is also called The Tales in Color. Tales in Color. It was just after dawn, and whiffs of smoke rose over the blackened shingle rooftop of a small house situated in the center of a village. Tshering was bending over the hearth, stirring the bubbling and frothing contents in a huge cauldron. The room was almost in pitch darkness, save for the shaft of light that entered the room from a single, partially opened shutter. Tshering was one of the most reputed dyers in the valley, and she was in the process of dyeing yarn in the secrecy of the early morning, behind closed doors and shutters. Since some time now, Tshering had agreed to teach her grandniece Kwencho how to dye wool. The eager learner had already come to the house while Tshering was lighting the stove. She greeted Kwencho. Secrecy is crucial, not only to safeguard the dyeing recipes which I learned from my grandmother and mother, but also against the malevolent spirits that are lurking everywhere. Kwencho looked a little surprised. What can the spirits do to what is in your mind? Yeah, you don't know. They can do anything. They can interfere with the dyeing process and spoil the colors. They can even make me forget the recipes. And then what? Kwencho was suddenly frightened by the power of the spirits. Who are the spirits? They're everywhere, lurking around to do harm. They don't actually do harm physically like we people do. They are not physical people, but we can feel the pain that they cause and see the damage they do. Several deep muted nods indicated that Kwencho understood what she was saying, so she continued. Envy, greed, and ambition were personified as malevolent spirits in both the living and in the dead, and these malevolent spirits are mortally detrimental to the dyer's endeavors. They spoil the dyes and the desired colors become unattainable. Kwencho was silent, thinking of what the old dyer had just said. The ramifications were immense. All the work of preparing the wool and all the expensive dye stuff going to waste simply because somebody felt envy or greed. She knew that Kwencho was watching closely, as she should. After all, she had come to learn from her. She wrung the liquid out of the yarns, the entire length of her arms responding in a stubborn, rigid way. Squeeze, squeeze, and wring, wring. She twisted her arms obtusely as the last drops of water dripped back into the cauldron. Then she examined each skein of yarn, holding it up against the early morning sunlight and studying it, turning the skeins in different directions. Her soot-covered face, which was up to now furrowed in concentration, suddenly lit up, and she beamed with satisfaction. The overall effect was satisfactory. The colors had turned out exactly as she had imagined, a deep plum red. If love had a color, this was it. She still inspected each skein minutely. She knew there would always be some stubborn portions that refused to take the color. She made sure that the color of love was complete and never faded. Tshering lowered her deep, resonating voice almost to a whisper. Rinjindema, do you know why we have to dye our wool? The question was addressed to her directly, but both the younger women knew that she did not expect an answer, for that was the way Tshering always spoke, asking questions and answering them herself. Rinjindoma, who had joined the two women in the yard, stood by awkwardly watching the old woman at her work. Still a little flushed and humiliated, she had come to ask Tseringmo's advice on a spoiled dye bath. The three women were sitting in the grass in front of Tseringmo's yard, not far from the cauldron with the soaking yarns. Kwencho watched the sunlight hitting the dye bath, and she imagined the yarn soaking up the color and changing the tones under the warmth of the sun. Rinjindoma looked on listlessly, wondering if the old woman would ever continue her story, debating on whether to wait or go home. Eventually, they turned to her expectantly as they heard her voice, unhurried and loud. She began her story again. A long, long time ago, there was a king in Tibet who sent his minister to seek the hand of the Chinese princess Ashijatsa in marriage. The Chinese imperial family did not want to give away the princess, but the Tibetan king was powerful and they could not refuse. So they thought of some obstacles which would make it impossible for the king to take away the princess from China. They would bring together thousands of Ashijatsa lookalikes who would be paraded in front of the visiting Tibetan minister, and he would be given one chance to choose the true Ashijatsa. The minister was worried, but determined to choose the true princess for his king. So he searched for any clues that would help him to recognize the true princess. After a long search, he finally reached a solitary house where he sought shelter for the night. His host was a lone old woman who was busily spinning wool at a spinning wheel. The minister begged her to tell him how he could recognize the true princess. She refused, saying that all of China's citizens were forbidden on pain of death to reveal the identity of the princess. "Tell me in secret, nobody shall know," he urged. "No secret can be hidden from the Chinese imperial diviners. They will discover the disclosure immediately." The minister thought for a long time, finally came up with a scheme that convinced the old woman to cooperate. He put 3 huge boulders to serve as a tripod. Over the tripod, he placed a large vessel of water in which he put a basket. Then he stuck feathers of every kind of bird known to the world into the weave of the basket. The old woman was made to get into the basket, and using a long blowpipe, she was instructed to whisper the secret to the minister, who was listening at the other end of the blowpipe. The next day, thousands of girls, all looking like Ashijatsa, was paraded in front of the minister. The minister, confident with the secret knowledge, knew to look only for the girl with the tiny silver honeybee hovering near her left ear and the golden honeybee near her right ear, for she would be the real princess. Seeing the girl with the tiny silver and golden honeybees hovering near her head, he took his white ceremonial scarf and draped it around her neck, saying, "Choose your princess as you will, but this is my princess." The Chinese imperial family was stunned. The diviners were summoned immediately, and enormous divination charts were spread out and studied. The traitor had to be identified and punished. Repeated divinations and calculations gave the same result. An immensely big and strange bird with the feathers of every kind of bird sat in a lake on top of a tri-peaked mountain, had revealed the identity of the true princess through its blowpipe-like beak. Everybody was baffled, but the empress was furious. Declaring the jars to be useless, she tore them up and threw the pieces into the fire. Almost out of breath after this exciting piece of information, she paused for a while as if not knowing what to say. This caused Rinchen to ask, "But you were supposed to tell us about the different colored sheep." "I'm coming to that. Can't you wait a while?" Tshering replied, almost hurt that Rinchen might have doubted her ability to tell a story to its end. Again a pause. "Did the Tibetan minister run away with the princess?" No, not yet," Quencher replied, holding onto the fragile thread of continuity. "The Tibetan minister not only took the princess but also stole the Chinese king's herd of sheep. The sheep had wool of every color. The escaping party had traveled far beyond reach before the Chinese realized what had happened. Seeing this, the empress grew even more angry and spat out in rage and frustration a curse that the escaping party should perish. Her curse was fulfilled immediately, and her spittle turned into a lake, and all the sheep drowned except the black and white one. They were saved because Ashijata had in the nick of time called out, 'Karti, Naktong, Karti, Naktong,' which means 10,000 white and 1,000 black. The black and white sheep heeded to her call, and they were saved. These sheep were the original ancestors of our black and white sheep who are with us today. This is why we have only black and white sheep, and we have to use dyes to get the other colors." Her eyes sparkled as she had remembered the story to its end, and she was satisfied even though she would have to re-dye the yarns that did not take the color. Fully aware of the reason and the need to color wool, Tshering was dedicated to brightening the lives with the vibrant colors that came of her dye baths. "I just cannot imagine clothes without color. That would be horrible, just black and white and gray. No, she said. This childless spinster was assured that the art and secrets of her dyeing skills would not die with her. She had passed on her dyeing recipes and methods to several women in the valley, and now Rinchen and Quencher were there with her, listening, watching, and learning, and she was satisfied. Tshering used only natural dyes, and with an impatient sweep of her hands waved away the topic of synthetic and chemical dyes. "These days, everybody uses these new dyes. I know nothing about them, and I wouldn't know how to use them." She certainly knew the natural colors she used. Quencher had watched her buying sticklac for red color. The sticklac was a resinous secretion deposited on tree branches by an insect in the subtropics. She also used madder, the climbing creeper, which, like the sticklac, she'd got from the merchants who came to barter the dye stuff against buckwheat grains she carefully collected as fees for dyeing wool for the villagers. Tshering always managed to either coax or command one of the younger people in the village to bring her branches of the tree sim she used for the color yellow. Every time Tshering worked with the Indo-Khotan rich leaves, Dzongkha, she would say, "This is the most difficult dye material to work with. The process of dyeing the various shades of blue is as delicate as it is laborious. Tshering was adamant about not allowing pregnant women to come into the house while she was in the process of dyeing thread. If they do come, rather than the unborn baby stealing away my colors and spoiling my dye baths, I give the baby a little color like this. Tshering dipped her forefinger into the bath and flicked a little dye. The pink and the red birthmarks on newborn babies are from the lac and madder, and the blue and black ones are from indigo, she had said with conviction. She left her trademark impressions on the fabrics as well as on the people around her. With the flick of her finger, she created birthmarks on babies who would grow up to appreciate and enjoy the colors she produced. Tshering is 72 years old, and she sits on her porch day after day, staring vacantly into space or pottering around in a house, not quite sure of what she's supposed to do. She does not remember faces or names. She often thinks she is her dead sister Tshering. She does not even remember when she ate her last meal. She smiles when she meets anyone and sees things that are completely unrelated to the person or the situation. When people tell her that she was a great dyer, she looks at them in surprise and says, "Really? Who told you?" She was an active and vivacious person until a few years ago. Over the years, she had complained that she kept forgetting things, places, people, and events, and people just said, "It's natural. As we grow older, we all forget." As the years passed by, she could remember less and less, and soon she could not remember how to make the dye baths for dyeing her wool. The villagers were shocked that the most reputed dyer in the village could no longer dye the simplest colors. She just smiled and shook her head, and the villagers realized that Tseringmo's forgetfulness was total and perhaps not so natural. It was now that they realized that they had lost something they could never get back. But nobody could ever deny that, just as Tseringmo had colored the fabrics the people used to clothe themselves with, she had also brightened their lives with the tales she told them. Not simple tales, but tales in color. Now Tseringmo cannot even tell one color apart from the other. The